this short. Well, whatever. We're not late. So, anyways, welcome, welcome everyone. So, first of all, it's a big pleasure for me to meet you in person because I have absolutely no idea most of them who you are, right? Because I don't work with the first year students, and I only see the saw the second year students on Zoom, which means that I never saw anyone, basically, right? But it's very good to meet you in person, right? And I hope that with the first years we will meet next year in person on the probability theory course. So hold tight. But today we have a very special event. We have a very special guest. This is Dave Morgan from the United States from Simon Media. This is a CEO and founder of the Simon Media company. And here we also have some people that actually are interns in Simon Media, right? And very, very happy to work with this company, right? So this is just a small but nice company, right, of people, small chat with a friend of Ukraine, with a friend of our country, of our, let's say, university. And of course, without any further ado, let me pass the floor, let's say, to Dave, and wish all of us a very fruitful discussion, a very nice time together.
Well, thank you, Danilo. Is the microphone okay? Okay, good. How much time do we have? Because
around, let's say, maybe 30 to 40.
Perfect.
And then for questions.
Yeah. I'm going to stand, even though I have a chair, but I spend lots of time on planes and lots of time on trains and time in cars. So first, I want to thank you all for being here. And I also, it's really important for me to say um, that how inspired I am by all of you. And I think that sometimes news, crazy politicians don't capture all that's happening, but it's truly inspiring what you're doing. I'm in awe truly of everyone in Ukraine, and I'm certain. And I will tell a little bit about why I am here from the United States and why this is the ninth time I've been in Ukraine in the last 23 months, and had never been here before, and I had no connection to Ukraine. But this will be, I think, I'll have about 85 days in the country now in that time period, and it's because I know this is the most important event of my lifetime, and I'm a lot older than you all, so probably older than your parents, I think, 61. So, and I know that this is more equivalent to 1938 in my parents. And I also want you to know that in spite of what the news and sometimes the politicians, the support of the American people, the support of American business people, the support of Americans in Congress is unquestioned for Ukraine. You cannot go to the tiniest village in the United States without seeing Ukraine flags. And we know that you're fighting for the freedom for all of us, and that those in your family and those of your colleagues and friends and neighbors and everybody else. And so I want to make sure that you know that. And sometimes it's hard to always recognize that, and not always to get too caught up in what happens between the politicians. We've had a democracy for almost 250 years, and boy, it can go up and down and be a little crazy. So, it's amazing what you're building here. And, sometimes you have to just sort of take a deep breath through all of that. My background is as an entrepreneur in technology and software, and largely in software that's built around the internet and the world of advertising. And I did not have the advantage of being trained in the world of mathematics and machine learning and things like that as you have. I started as an industrial engineer, and I ended up as a politics major and went to law school. So I want to be clear that I've had the pleasure of working with technologists now for more than 30 years and starting companies. And I find my part of it is to try to ask questions, to solve problems, to observe markets, to try to find fits. I was fortunate to have a very strong early foundation in mathematics, and even wrote computer software in way before even your parents were born, probably 1970s, but computer games. So I know how code's made, and I've made a lot of code in my companies, And so what I'm hoping I could probably talk about today is maybe give you a little kind of sense of, I think, some of the things that you can be thinking about as you're going through your educational career, and some of the things that are happening, where I think business and industry and opportunities. And I'll also try to make them particularly relevant to what I've seen and I've learned in my times in Ukraine. And as I said, recognize I'm still very new to Ukraine. I speak none of your language. I apologize for that. Um, um, I can't learn it, and it's not because one, I'm lousy at learning languages. That's an American problem we have sometimes. But mostly, my wife is Mexican, and my children are Mexican. And so, if I learn Ukrainian before I really get my Spanish solid, I will not be good. That will not be good. So Spanish is actually the first language of our home, because that's the way that my daughters are now 21 and 20. So that's the way they can do whatever they want to do without my having to know what's really going on. And so, um, uh, so anyway, that's my little background. As I talk, please ask any questions or object or anything you want. And if there's things you'd like me to talk about, that would be really helpful too. If there's some particular topics, because I could talk on a lot of things. Yes, because I love the sweatshirt, obviously.
A question regarding your biography. Like, what inspired you to change like the field of activity, like from the lawyer school, as you said, yeah, to the marketing and software technologies? So yeah, it's
Thank you. That's a very good question. So one of the reasons I went to law school was my father was a lawyer, and I grew up in a very tiny town in the mountains with no one around. For every person, there was maybe 20 deer. So it's a mining area with hunting. And so that's what I knew. And I knew law, and I could talk, and I loved, and every day at the dinner table, I was interrogated, like the TV shows and lawyers. So I liked that. When I was a lawyer, I found out that the practice of law was to be a technician. You would learn a very specific list of things to do, and you would execute them. And that if you really wanted to be commercially successful and make a lot of money, you would do the most boring things, because that's usually the ones no one else wants, but they tend to be worth a lot. And so I started becoming an expert in the laws that govern the insurance of automobiles. I became an expert, trying to become an expert in the laws that governed the governance of automotive sales dealerships. And I decided that was not what I wanted to be doing for 30 years. And even though I could be paid well and I could have a nice car and I would have a nice vacation, I had a lot of ideas. I felt I was very creative. I had business ideas. So I'd be in meetings with the clients, and I thought they were doing things in the business that didn't make sense. And I would ask. I was pretty young, but I don't mind asking. And I'm like, don't you think you should do this way? And they're like, no, you're the lawyer. Go away. You're the lawyer. And we had a client that had this idea that the personal computer was going to be a commodity, and that they had gotten a license from the company that had the patents of the operating system and controlled the code of the operating system of the personal computer from IBM. And they could license their operating system. They were going to open it up, and they were going to manufacture them in my part of the United States in Pennsylvania. I know it's a long answer to a short question, but I'm trained as a lawyer, so I talk sorry. So I thought, this is crazy. Why would someone go borrow someone else's approach to make a business? And this gentleman's name, this business was eventually owned by Paul Allen, who was one of the founders of Microsoft. And the idea of opening up the software and licensing it more freely and letting other people build on the platform and use it changed the world of technology. And that inspired me. And so I was inspired by technology. I liked it and believed in it. I had played in it. I found out that the path I had started as a lawyer was not what I wanted to do every day. And so I I had so I quit the job. I quit my law firm and I went to the beach and I lifeguarded, literally. And I read books because my high school wasn't that great in literature. And I really didn't feel that I was as well rounded as I needed to be. And so I literally lifeguarded. I read books. I worked on a political campaign. And then I got an idea. And then I got a job with a company that worked with newspaper companies. There were actually physical newspaper products in most of the places in the world that were printed, and people relied on them every day for their news. They don't really exist anymore today. But and I got an idea, and then I realized that the online services, we didn't have the web, but we did have the internet. And it seemed to me that online services was going to change the way all media would be delivered. And I had this idea, and I in an elevator in Dallas, Texas, in January of 1995, from the 17th floor, I got on the elevator. On the 14th floor, someone got on a conference, and his badge, it was a conference, said Brad Burnham, AT&T Ventures. And so from 14th floor to the first floor, I pitched him an idea that I thought the internet was going to change the way companies published news, and that it would go onto the computer screen, and that would mean that you would need to put advertising there. But since you're putting it on a computer screen, people could read the same news, but you could give each of them different ads. And you could change it depending on what you knew about them or where they were living or what they had looked at before. And so it's a long story short, but he agreed to talk to me. I then went to New York to see him the next week. He basically shamed me, and he told me that nobody that really cares about starting a company will work in a day job. And if I really care, I have to quit my job right away. And if I really care, I have to leave Pennsylvania because nothing's happening in Pennsylvania. And I've got to go to New York City where everything happens in the advertising business. And I was young, I was single, and I was easily persuaded. And so I did that. And it was really, really scary. And I got lucky that some of the things I thought were going to happen happened. And I thought I would get a company of 2 or 3 or 5 people. And 5 years later, I had 600 employees around the world. I had offices in Hong Kong and 17 offices in Europe. I know my language skills are terrible, but like it's, and so it's a very long answer to it. And I found it's something I loved and I could do. And I loved taking the risk. I loved bringing the ideas together with the tech. Is that helpful? Yeah, thanks. It's one of the reasons why, and we were just talking a little bit about curriculum as we walked here. And, one of the things that I've done since deciding to come here 23 months ago to see what I could do as an American tech entrepreneur to help. And I wanted to bring attention to Ukraine. And then I started meeting people, and I realized that what I could do is I could help. I did not like that I heard a lot of Western European and US companies were not using the tech services in Ukraine anymore because they were worried about stoppage in the war. Like, that's crazy. Everybody I deal with here, they're up all night and they're in the office like the next day, all the time. And they're down in the shelters, like doing their work. I'm like, it's crazy here. So I decided, well, my company needs to grow and we need to grow globally. And I don't just want to look to Ukraine as a place where people do their dev work offshore. Like, this is actually where ideas can generate. And so now in the last 12 months, we have about 37 people, I think, mostly between Lviv and Kyiv, and and trying to really build a culture around building products. I have a point I'm going to make here, by the way, but like building products and hiring people that are business people, not just the tech people. Because I think one of the things I learned was, as a lawyer, that sometimes people want to put you in a box, and they say, well, you're a mathematician, you only know that, or you're a computer scientist, you know that, or you're a lawyer and you know that. And we have so much more. And one of the things I have really enjoyed with all of the people that I'm working with now in Ukraine is that your education system is so robust, and I know parts of it are boring and rigid, um, but but coming from places where people get so professionalized early into only into liberal arts or history or only into technology or others. I love the fact that, Max and I, when we can ride the metro, are talking more about history of museums and art. And he's like, than we are about machine learning or applied mathematics. And I think that's one of the things that makes people in Ukraine so special, because you have that. I'm just going to say, so in case there's some of those courses you hate, like why you were taking that that history course, or why you took chemistry, I had to argue with one of our new product managers. Didn't met him yet in Lviv. And I hate my chemistry. I don't know why I had to take all my chemistry. I'm like, it's all math though, right? Everything's applied math. I know I've been told that. I'm like, but no, you're going to find chemistry is going to be helpful for you in life, just like reading those books will. So it's another way of saying, I think that to explain my career journey, which is, I'm really glad I had really strong math and science, and that my parents helped us tinker with chemicals, and she didn't know we were making explosives at the time, but that's okay. Small ones, but and that, but that I also, had the time to read the books, and so I sort of, I'm always trying to encourage people as they're in this phase of when you're in school and you can choose courses and find those things that are passions, find those things that put you in uncomfortable places sometimes too, and realize that you don't have to know exactly that you need to be put on this path, that you have to do this job and then this job and this job. What are the questions? What things could I talk about? What things might you wonder? What? Yes.
For me, it's interesting. What was the most interesting thing in your when your business started to grow? Like, what was the most interesting thing to look on your business? Like when you have to employ many people, you don't know how to do it. What was interesting?
Oh, it was scary. My father was a lawyer. My mother was a nurse, so I had no sense of business. You probably do similar things in your sports teams, your children's young sports teams. You will sell candies or sell something to make some money to have a banquet at the end of the year. I was the one who never could sell anything. So I would have to take the box back, whatever my parents wouldn't buy. So I fought structure. I don't like the imposition of structure from others. I probably don't like to be controlled. I'm not a good employee. I think that's one of the reasons I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a good employee. Maybe I have not had good bosses, but I've actually had some really wonderful bosses. But I'm not a good employee. So I refused to let people make an organogram. I don't know if that translates well, but it's like the organizational structure. I refused to let them make one. I'm like, no, I don't like that. That's corporate. And they're like, no, Dave, but we have hundreds of people in the company. They actually need to know who they report to and who their boss is and who can tell them what to do and not. I said, no, we don't do that. I said, bosses and managers have to earn the respect of the people working for them. It can't be because someone has to tell them what to do. And I tell people, if you really want to learn to manage people, go to the military or go to the postal service. They're really good at that, and they'll teach you at that. But that's not what I teach you. I learned that's not the smartest way to do things. That there are some right balances. You need. So I think the most important thing I learned was the work is done by the people that are working with you, working for you, and that it's about empowering them, and that I was fighting against this idea, don't tell people what to do. And I've learned that. I learned that, but I learned it's a really heavy responsibility. And so the thing I've carried with me now over 30 years in 3 companies and more than probably 2,000 people working for me is that I worry about each one. And like every single time someone comes and works with me, I know it's not just them, it's their family, it's their friends, their children. Um, and then there's this responsibility because they're entrusting their time part of their career. And so I realized that I had ideas in my head on what I thought I wanted to do with my company. And what I realized pretty quickly when I hired people, and then I had a number of people, it was their company. And that I had to really understand my job and I was going to have to do it better and better. And so then I learned that my job needed to be to really establish a clear vision that was understandable to everybody, that got their passion and being willing to solve it. Number 2, to provide them the resources to get the job done. And then number 3, to remove distractions from the world. Now, the funny part of this is the company that I currently have, Simul Media, we're 16 years old. And in our world, the market's already changed twice. And I'm aware, and one of the things I decided to do on this trip, because I spend a lot of time on planes or on trains, I'll be going to Kharkiv in the morning, and is I have some projects that I'll work on. And I'm like, I've really got to republish a better and newer vision statement. So my new colleague, who I'll not say his name right now, but Max will figure him out at some point, who was the one who was complaining about his chemistry. And he was like, I really spent week 1, I did this, and then week 2, I did this, and week 3, I did this. I went through all the documents, and I have to say, I can't find the vision of this company. And I don't find a clear vision of this company. And I want to know, am I not looking in the right place? Is there like a set of files I should be looking in? Or do you not have one? Now, this is not unusual to you because you all live in Ukraine and you know the wonderful beauty of the directness of Ukrainian people. And I was like, you have no idea how accurate you are. I said, because I knew I started my way in from New York to Scotland, but that's another little story. If you want, I can tell you about it. But I knew that I had this problem, and I was procrastinating. I'll get to it. And I was like, okay, you just validated, and I'm going to go see him again in Lviv on Wednesday. We're going to go to a bear sanctuary with the team down there, and I said, look, I promise by Wednesday I'm going to get you. We'll talk about it, and by Tuesday I'm going to get that vision statement. So the simple answer is, I realized that when I had a company and I had people, I had a massive responsibility to them. And what I take personal satisfaction in is not the achievement of the company. I mean, my companies have done pretty well, and I've been fortunate. It's helped me do well economically, much more. I mean, I did not come from any kind of needs. I had to borrow all the money I needed. I had to borrow to go to college, and I had to borrow to go to law school. And my parents weren't able to pay for that. But what I'm most proud of are among these 2,000 people that have worked for me, like what they've done. And that's the exciting part. Like, I get so excited, like, oh, who's the best person working for you? I'm like, no, they're not working for me now. So like, the CFO of the Google properties worked for me. This is someone who manages a $2 trillion business, and I brought him into the industry 26 years ago. And we had a drink, and I was like, he's like, yeah, did you ever think? Like, no, like, I never thought. The woman who runs sales advertising for Apple, they hired her from me. And they're like, oh, you must be so upset. Apple hired their chief revenue officer for advertising. And I'm like, no, she worked for me for 8 years. Like, I gave her, she was like sort of a baby when she joined. Like, she's now with one of the world's greatest companies. Like, that's my job. So it's a long answer once again, but I hope that's helpful. I did not know that going in. I don't know if they teach that in business school necessarily. I think maybe I had the advantage of not having gone to business school, though I think the business school curriculum is a very powerful one as well. But any other questions? Yes.
Have you had like a backup plan when you were like leaving your law career for nothing at that time? It's a risky move to New York when you're young, when you have nothing at all. Like, what was the process of thinking?
I did not have a backup plan. It freaked my parents out. And I still owed a bunch of student loan money. So it's not like I left with like, oh, I saved up money and I can go do this. No, I should have been smart and like paid all my student loans down before I quit the job, but I didn't. Um, I knew what I was doing wasn't what I wanted to do, and I knew there was an opportunity, and um, I'm better going forward than going backwards. I'll give an example, something I don't know about myself, but like, when I was in college, like we had to take a certain amount of physical education courses. I don't know if schools make you do it, but my college made you, which is, I don't think they do it anymore. Like you could not graduate my university if you didn't swim. My high school had that too, so but that was a little bit more of like part of the American. Well, we had a lot of lakes too, but anyway. So but it was fun to go to college and you could take these different phys ed courses things you didn't know. And like I came from a very traditional small little school, and I was a swimmer, and I eventually then in college I played water polo. I know I'm very small for water polo, but they had fencing, and I was like, that's great. Like it's like the movies and like swords and like I never had seen a fencer, like never even, I mean, on TV only. And so in Penn State, my college happened to have the national champions in fencing. So they're very good in the United States in fencing at that time. And so the people teaching the phys ed course were the best. And I'm very like trying to understand the techniques. I can't dance or anything, but I was like, okay, I'm trying to learn this. And we had these competitions, and your grade would be determined if you could get all the way up the ladder. And I kept getting all the way up the ladder. And then the phys ed professor, the coach of the team, would pull me all the way back and say, no, you can't. You have to go back. And he would be like, your defensive technique's terrible. I'm not going to, you can't be in the A's. You have to be in the B's. I said, I keep beating them. And he said, you're only beating them because you only have one gear, and that's offense. And I'm not going to give you an A if you can't actually learn to defend yourself. The moment someone attacks you, you just attack harder. I think now, like, I didn't understand it as a 19-year-old. I was mad. I did not get my A because I never really got the defensive techniques. I didn't have enough time. But he was right. So anyway, my point is, I lean towards taking the chance and taking the risk, and I don't look back. And it's scary, but I also believe that's, for me, that has worked best. And I think a lot of times, if you're worrying about your backup, then you miss out on your opportunity. And so yeah, it's I mean, in some ways, it's like, I think if I hadn't like had the chance, I mean, I'm here in Ukraine because I was asked to speak at an event in Warsaw 2 years ago on advertising, and I asked my wife if she wanted to travel along, and she said, "Sure, I'm not in Warsaw." I'm like, "That's great." And she's involved in something in Spain, and she said, "I'm going to go to Spain the next week." I said, "Great." I said, "Well, I'll go to Ukraine." And she's like, "Well, sure, you go ahead, you do that." And then I made a bunch of plans, and then I networked through, and I actually had some different organizations set up meetings. I sponsored a conference to get a bunch of people in the advertising technology world together. They hadn't been together in more than a year at that point since the full-scale invasion. And then I tell her this like a few weeks later. I'm like, "Oh, you're excited? I got all these things set." And she's like, "Well, you're not going." I'm like, "Well, no, I'm going. Like, I told you I'm going. Like, it's important." She's like, "Well, there's a war." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but like, that's why I need to go. Like, you need to be there. Like, I have to go." And she's like, "You're right." She said, "But she's Mexican." So she's like, "Here's the thing. A, we're not going to talk about it. And B, if you die, I'll come over and kill you." So it's like, it's a very Mexican kind of thing to say. But my only point I'm trying to say is I think you have to like lean forward. Like, I don't think you can be both assessing everything that can't work, perfectly deciding what works. Sometimes you just have to like and that fits me a little bit better sometimes. Other questions?
First of all, good evening. It's really a pleasure to meet you. I have two questions. First question, how did your lawyer career help you in your business? Maybe you bring out some skills, knowledges, or maybe a global point of view about the whole world. And second question, you mentioned procrastination. If I didn't misunderstood you, maybe you could tell us about your experience, how to fight with it, maybe your
Yeah.
personal advices, if you can.
That's a
Thank
really
you.
good one. I mean, the first question was good, but that second one's a really good question. Thank you. Wow. My first one, I'm very happy that I went to law school and was a lawyer. I mean, I could have done something else in that time period, but it really helped me organize thinking and organize structural way to problem solve. The U.S. legal system is all based on case law, common law, which is similar to the English system, and so it's cases, and you need to, which is different than some of the European systems that are based on civil law, which is based on rules. So in rules, you just become expert in the rules, but in common law, you become expert in the context of the situation, and you apply one to another, the case model. And so there's a very specific rigor, very scientific actually, in making observation and collecting facts and data. And then only once you've exhausted that do you analyze the data. And then only once you have analyzed it do you then start synthesizing it together. And then only when do you do that, you start building conclusions. And then you start testing them going down. And that's part of like the litigation and the judge, are testing it. And that's why there's very specific things of the facts and the law. And then you apply the law and you have to argue, is this one like this one? Is it like this one? Which I think in many ways is not unlike how people build software and solve problems and use science. And so that rigor was really good for me. And then most law, it's not like the movies, most law is in written form. Almost all of your practice of law is in written form, not actually oral presentation. So it forced me to write. And that was one of the most important things. And yeah, I know ChatGPT can write unbelievably fast, but the rigor of actually building narratives and arguing points, it's like writing a novel. It's like, are you going to go in hard early and then come back? Are you going to like hold your best stuff back? Are you going to preempt? Very strategic communication. And then I learned it can be owned and controlled. Like when I went to work in a law firm and they would say, well, you're going to write a brief for this case and it's going to be 110 pages and you're going to give it to me in 9 days. I didn't think that was possible until you do it, and then you realize you can do it. And then you realize like procrastination is coming right in. I'm going to tie it in neatly here. You can realize like there you can procrastinate because you got to be, if you don't do that base work and that factual work and get it nailed, you're going to get all the way to the end and have your conclusions and they're going to be suck and they're going to be wrong. And the managing partner who told you to do it and you show it up on the 8.5 day is going to say you didn't have your facts right. Like, or look at this analysis. Let's go back and look at the analysis. I want to see your notes, what you had. So I use my law training every single day. A small part of it is actually, it also demystifies the notion of law and lawyers. So I don't let them screw with me, not in the wrong way. Just like, it's like, no, wait a minute. Like, don't tell me, I mean, even here, like, because there's a lot of paperwork here, like having companies here. I have a defense tech company too, which I can talk a little bit, but it's like I'm like, no, isn't it like this? And isn't this what you're really trying to seek? And aren't you trying to do this? So I also learned to interrogate and have confidence in my rigor and my rhetoric, my analysis, my capacity to problem solve, my logic. And this is why I think every single thing you do in mathematics are like follow these same things too. I just got to do it with words and concepts, and yours have a basis in something pure. So procrastination. So I mean, the amount of I was always a procrastinator. And I was always like, how many times we have all been told by someone in our life to pick the towels off the floor, right? Has everybody here at once been told to pick a towel off the floor? Is there anyone that has not been told that once in their life? Almost everyone's told that not just once, probably 50 times. Like, please pick the towel off the floor or the clothes off the floor. I mean, whatever those, right. And you would think if you were told once, that's all you probably need. If you're told once at 3 years old and you really remember it, like, I just don't leave my clothes on the floor. I don't leave my towel on the floor. No, I mean, I'm 61 years old. Like, I'm told sometimes, Dave, pick your towel off the floor, pick the clothes off the floor. I'll get to it. I will get to it. No, I told you an hour ago to pick the clothes off the floor. So I have a procrastination problem like everybody. What I have learned to do is to recognize that the guilt of procrastination is sometimes what makes it worse. And you have to realize when you become comfortable with your own capacity that you cannot do everything. You can't. You can't do all the things you want to do. You can't. You can't do all the things you would like to do. You can't. You can't not do all the things people expect you to do or want you to do. You have a certain amount of capacity. And you have to trust yourself sometimes to both add some rigor to how you prioritize. Like, what's the most important thing I need to do? Not the most important 18 things I need to do. What are the 2 or 3 things I need to do? And give yourself the capacity to be winning on those things. To get a win, like, I'm going to get these done. And is it realistic to get 6 done today? Maybe not. I typically find that the thing that I want to procrastinate on more, there's a reason for it. And so what I do when I find, and I run a lot. I run in the morning a lot, and that's my way to clear my head. And that's when I decide my things I'm going to do that day. I got lots of my favorite runs in this city and Lviv and in Kharkiv and Poltava and Lutsk. So I can tell you my different runs in Ukraine. I love there's a lot of runners here too. That's like, there's nothing like, as much as it's great to be solitary out there early in the morning, there's nothing like at 5:45 or 6 in the morning and you're like crossing the bridge on the river and then you see someone come through the fog and you're like, oh, someone else, or the snow. So what I find is if something is hanging too long, that I'm procrastinating the same thing too long, I stop. And then I make that my focus. And my question is not beating myself up. Dave, stop it. Get it done. Go get it done. Because that's not helpful to yourself. I try to understand why I'm doing it. I try to say, like, I'm a human. For some reason, I'm not solving this. What is it? And I usually find out maybe it's something that I just don't want to confront. Maybe it's a conversation. For me to solve this problem might be I have to have a conversation with someone that's uncomfortable and I'm like not ready to have that. And then I have to realize, no, that's what it is. Your problem is not making the decision of moving forward and changing this organizational structure. Your problem is Sam over here. You were afraid to have the conversation you need to have with Sam. That's why you're avoiding it. Go talk to Sam. Or maybe it just wasn't important enough that you had to really do it, but you keep promising that you can do it. And maybe what you really need to do is tell the person you promised it to, I can't get it done. Sorry. Like, I wanted to, I like to, I want to please you, but I can't. Or with this vision statement, to realize that I'm afraid, because I'm thinking this through as I'm saying, because I've been trying to think, okay, I got to get it done. Why? That it's hard when you start a company and then the markets change a couple times. A little bit's confidence. Like, am I going to nail it? Like, because I got a lot of people depending on it. And something like a vision statement, for example, is like, if it's more than like 28 words, like it's a mess. So I would say procrastination is, a lot of people think, well, I'm a procrastinator, I'm no good, like I'm never going to be the one to get stuff done. And realize it's not the problem. It's usually something else. And the more you give yourself capacity to like set back a little bit sometimes, take a breath and say, okay, why is it I'm not getting this done? And maybe I'm going to leave the towel on the floor, the clothes on my floor, because I'm upset with my wife because she did it yesterday, and I want to like leave clothes there. So then I have to go talk to her about it. So that's why I'm leaving it, because you did it. Have the conversation. Is that helpful? Yes.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you for coming here, for being here, for working with us. And I have like two questions. First of all, why did you choose this way? And did you have like the minds about give up your way, your when you like started your business, like minds about, okay, now I'll give up. I can't do this. And the second question is, you said that some of the people who worked for you were hired by global companies like Microsoft and Apple. So how does it affect on your company? Like people see you and, oh, that guy worked for this guy, and now that guy is hired by Microsoft. Maybe this company is very valuable or something like that.
Good questions. So on the I'm going to interpret the first question as sort of like, how do you go into something and take the risk or deal with the potential for failure? Yeah. I was lucky in that I grew up in a competitive house. My father was competitive. We played cards, we played chess, we played board games. When we drove places, we played games. And so it wasn't just doing it for the games. There was always a little bit of like, hey, I won this one, not you. Like, Daddy and I won, not Mom. Like, so so I grew up very competitive. I did describe I tend to sort of lean a little more towards offense than defense, so that like I don't. And and then my parents were very good about putting us into competitive sports and team sports, and one of the things that I found really valuable in that was that you realize when you're part of a team that you actually have a bunch of other people depending on you, and you are depending on them. And a lot of sports, you realize it takes a long time to come together and to gel, that winning in competition takes a lot of practice, and that failure is an absolute regular part of that. I mean, if you've been on a team, if you've never never had a loss, I congratulate you, but I don't have that. And so I think that I was lucky that I was able to fail a lot when I was little. And yeah, I mean, sometimes my father would be like, I can't believe you didn't do this. And how did you, I was a swimmer, like, how did you get touched out at the wall by that other person? Or why'd you drop the ball like in the baseball game? And he's not a perfect parent. I know that's not, as a parent, like I try to be a perfect parent and only give positive encouragement, right? But I had a lot of failure. And you learn in failure that you don't dwell in failure. You learn from it, but dust yourself off, you get up and you go do it again, and you learn from it and you go forward. And so I think when I went into business, my sense was I didn't assume and expect that I was going to win. But I knew that if I had stumbles along the way, it wouldn't be complete failure. And so I felt better about it. And the second part was, I'm sorry, the second question was, oh, the hiring. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So there is a consulting company that's was always revered. It's famous, but not as revered as it used to be, called McKinsey. And one of the things that McKinsey is always makes part of its brand, hires really, really smart people coming out of school, and they're provided as consultants to businesses to help. And then they'll go into the company, and then they'll maybe go back to McKinsey for a while. They always say McKinsey is a great place to work, and it's a great place to have worked. So I try to have my companies that people would say, I loved my time there. And if they wear a badge, they'll wear it. They're like, and I'm really glad because it also prepared me for this other thing. And so I don't want to create a stigma that people feel that if the role I have for them and the job we have at the time and the business we're doing at that moment isn't perfect for them, and there's another opportunity, I want to help and support them to find that other opportunity. And then sometime, maybe in 3 years, we'll have a different opportunity and then I'll get them back. So I don't see it as proprietary. And that's one of the reasons, I mean, we're very excited, obviously, with the intern program that we've started here, and we're very excited about being long-term partners with this really extraordinary university. And by the way, it's obviously one that I knew well in the US and have known most of my life, that this is one of the world's, obviously very great universities. And so I've always liked the idea that if you can find people in the formative parts of their career, they can come work, sometimes intern for you. Maybe you have an opportunity right after school, maybe not, maybe 3 years later, you say, hey, remember me? Just made a hire right now. We have someone who interned with us 3 years ago, and it's exciting. And for some people that want some things the big company can give, I'll never be able to give people what a Microsoft or an Amazon or a Google is going to do. I'm going to give them a lot of things they can't give them, but I'm very happy to help prepare people for that. I think, and that's the part of realizing that education and learning is not something you're going to stop doing at 21 or 22 with your bachelor's, or a few years later with a master's, or a few years later with a PhD. It's, it's lifelong learning. I'm learning so much. I mean, the amount I've learned just in the books I read in the last 2 weeks, if anyone wants to talk about those books, I'm happy to talk about them. So I think if you find people that are always learning, then they should be seeking some different environments to learn from too, at times. It's a long answer again, I'm sorry, but I hope that, yes.
What were your biggest mistakes when you just started running the business, and what were the difficulties you faced? Thank you.
Oof. You can take me to points of pain. So the biggest mistake was in my first company, what was called the dot-com bubble. You weren't really even alive then, but that's okay. The internet and a lot of companies, which Google wasn't even created yet, it was just about to be created, and you had all these big companies. And the company that I had, someone was offering an unbelievably extraordinary amount of money. It was like unbelievable. And I was like, we were going to go public. And I said, no. Oh, it was $835 million. I didn't own that much of it. I owned but a good chunk of the company. It's like, and I didn't come from money. So it was like, I said, absolutely not. We're going to go public. This is like the boom, and the internet's taking over the world. And if you go back and look at history, the stock market collapsed at a point. It actually collapsed 30 days after I turned down that offer. Some of us give me in stock, so that wouldn't have been as good, but it would have been in cash. And I didn't take that. And it was not. I did not make the right rational decision. So I'm going to separate this first. Anyone that had looked at it and looked at the numbers and looked at the market and looked at my age and the company and who was going to win, I was making an emotional decision like, no, I'm going to take it public because I'm going to finish this journey. And I wasn't being a rational person or protector of my people who would have all done better to say, we're going to take this because they were going to get, everyone held stock in the company. I was being selfish. I was like the fencer that was like chasing people, but not trying to understand. So now I say it to you like it's this horrible thing that happened to me, but I have never, ever, ever lost a second of sleep over that decision because I got to make the decision on my own. So it wasn't like the worst ones are decisions someone pushes on you. I got to make the decision. I know why I made the decision. I learned from the decision. I grew out of that decision a lot. I then had to deal with the collapse of the market. I then had to lay off hundreds of people. Try to lay off people in Germany and France. Horrible process. I tried to, as much as possible, go to each of the offices we were doing so I could talk to them. Because I'm like, which is hundreds of people. That was, that was pretty emotionally wrenching. But I've never wished like, oh, I wish I had made that decision different, because I made the decision that I thought I wanted to make. I had 100% control of the decision. My investors were supportive of me. It was nice to know they would support me whatever decision I made. And I did the best I could to get the company down to a profitable phase. The person who's now the CFO of the Google Properties is, he's he's the mastermind that architected shrinking the company down and making it profitable. And we eventually merged it with a public company for no money, really. And then it saved a lot of people's jobs and it grew. And so I learned that, like, you don't look back. You learn from that decision. Now, how would my life be different if I had gotten all of that? Well, the most important thing is that I wouldn't have met my wife, who I met not long after I was like tearing that company down. Like, we met through a friend and circumstances, and so I would have a different life, and it wouldn't be nearly as good a life as I have. So I think that you have to look at these things not necessarily as cataclysmic, but you just have to look at them as catalyzing, like, your chance to, to learn about yourself, and that they always keep popping up. And so the way to deal with the hard things are, it was really hard because the market's falling down, and people know that I've like turned down all of this money, and they know that, and things are getting a little aggressive out there because people are like, yeah, you .com folks, your heads were in the clouds, and you have to sort of get up and confront the news, take it, get up every day, go do your job, do the best possible, be upfront about stuff. I talked to all the people that I had to lay off, that I'm like, look, I'm sorry, because I made a mistake here. I made business planning mistake that didn't have to cost you having trusted me. As I come back to the question about, that's what I learned about. They trust me, and I have an obligation to them. So I would say I don't feel that I've ever made a decision I would ever do differently. The only thing in life is just, what do you do after you've made a decision, or what do you do in life after an event occurs? It's not trying to rethink it. Learn what you can from it, but don't dwell on it too much. I would say, if I look at people at my peers, age peers, who have challenges in their life, for whatever that is, and there's a lot of events that may have occurred to them, I would say all of them are living with the guilt of some decision that they made wrong or didn't make. And I just think it's like, come on, take that load off your back. So I know but I've got a bunch of them like that. Not big economically, but I've made a lot of mistakes. Yes.
You've sold your companies before, and I have a question. Have you ever felt that some third party might influence your vision of your companies, like investors, some maybe decent employee, or the people you sell your companies to, like what they will do with my child?
Yeah, very good question. Well, what I learned is, if they give you money, it's their child too. And if If they give you and buy the company, it's their child and not your child. So I think you have to understand the proprietariness, and that was part of my stubbornness in not making the sale at that point, was that it wasn't my child. I may have felt passionate about it. It was all of the fellow people that built it. It was our investors that invested in it, and that I had obligations to them, and it was a custodian. And so I think I do have an obligation when selling a business to understand the issues for the employees and what the new company is going to do. And I think about that a lot. But I also realize that you can't be too selfish and you can't be too proprietary about that. And so in my second company that I sold, and it sold very well, and I'm fortunate in life, I decided to stay to run strategy for them. I didn't have to stay, but it was AOL, which used to be a dominant online company in the world, and America Online. And I said, I'll stay as long as we actually follow my strategy. And they decided to do something that was off strategy, and I quit. And everyone's like, oh, you must be so upset, and you sold your baby to them. And I'm like, no, they bought it. They paid me cash. Like, they own it. I wanted to see if I could work with them, but then I learned that I'm not a very good employee. So I would say that I think when you make things, you have to decide, are you making things because you're trying to solve a problem? Or are you making things because you're making things because you like what you make? And the greatest product manager, the founder of Intuit, Quicken, TurboTax, the Frexel here, Scott Cook. So the most important thing to always know is to fall in love with your customers' problems, not your products. And so I think that when you give yourself that perspective, you can say, I don't want to give this to someone who's not going to take care of my clients, my customers, solve their problems. But sometimes people are so in love with their own product that they would rather like hold on to it and sink to the bottom of the ocean and adore it. And so I think you have to make sure you don't become one of those, because it happens. I'm not trying to say I'm not, that doesn't happen to me. I love what I make, and I do like to adore it and say, oh, this is great. Don't you see how great this stuff I've made? And don't screw with it. But you have to realize, like, you're not the only one that can sort of, the only opinion that matters. Is that helpful? So I know time-wise, I don't know how we are since I've been talking, if that's, I mean, I'm fine because I'm having fun. Yes.
What is important or valuable skill for you in employee, and what probably soft skill can develop student in like early ages of their career?
Great question. This is one I think about and reassess all of the time. So what I'm going to describe has a lot to do with the kinds of companies that I create, which are companies that are using technology to solve problems in the business that are about to happen. Not just happening yet today, they're about to happen, where we need to win against really large companies that dominate those markets that may not want us around and they may want us gone. So first, intelligence. I don't mean exactly just what's in the brain, but it's really having an active intelligence and being smart and thinking. And so it's not just like being fortunate to have great genes, but it's like really being able to use the intelligence you have. Truly applied intelligence. Like I can think and I'm applying it. So we our shorthand will always say really strong IQ. Which means great problem solving. Great EQ, emotional quotient, the capacity to care for others. It's not just being social. Some people think of this emotional quotient, oh, that's very social. No, it's the capacity to care for others. the capacity to care about like what's happening to this person, because that makes 3. So those first 2 are a little bit more innate, and they sort of happen by the time you're in school now. So you've got a lot of those things relatively baked, but you can always refine it and think about it. Third, this is the most important: curious, innate curiosity. I don't want people that aren't curious. You need to want to understand, why is that happening? How does that work? Why do they do that? Like, can I break that thing open and look and see how it works on inside? Can I re-examine that? Curiosity, critical. Hard work. You can have people that have those first 3 that get lots of things done, but they don't work hard. There'll be lots of places for them in life, but not in my company. Because working hard and applying it, you can make a difference, and you can make more of a difference. And if people don't want to do that, that's fine. Lots of people have unbelievable talents and they've chosen to use only parts of them. Great, it's up to them. So those 4, and then I borrow something from the United States Navy, but I'm sure it predates the United States Navy. It goes way back to probably like Egyptians and Vikings, and is an absolute care about ship, shipmate, and self. A demonstrated care. In that order, but all important. By that I mean, people that understand they're on a ship. They're on a ship. And if that ship sinks, you're done. So like, you got to make sure the ship's okay. You have shipmates. There are other people that you're with, and you better care about them, and you better work with them, because if they aren't okay, probably the ship is going to sink, and then you sink. And then self. You can't just care about the ship and your shipmates. You need to care about yourself. You need to take care of yourself. You need to get sleep. You need to eat well. You need to deal with mental health issues that you may have going on. You need to be able to to do the right things, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't help your shipmate, and you can't save the ship, and you let people down. And so we look for people that have that package. And I find that people that have that package are amazing, and you're never going to find it perfectly. Like, I have a person in a really senior role, and we talk about the shipmate and self, and some of those things you can correct and work on. Like, so a lot of that you can some of it's just self-awareness. So I was talking to this guy, I'm like, because he's a guy, I'm like, you're really great at self, when you're really great at shipmates that you know are really the most perfect, the most essential shipmates. But you aren't helping the shipmates that need help. You're not a good development shipmate. And we need to work on that. And sometimes just working on it is having someone that can give that feedback to you. And so I'm like, look, like, it's not just 60% of your shipmates that matter, it's 100%. And I know you don't have patience for those other 40%, and you don't want to invest time in them, but you're going to need to. And so you probably have heard some themes coming through here, but I think that the one theme I would say that, if I would say at this stage, I'd be really thinking about is the more that you can learn and develop to be part of cohesive teams, and the more you can learn to trust, the more that you can learn to be trusted, the more that you can understand what it means to have success together and failure together. I find a lot of it at this stage, the people that develop, like, how do you work in a team? How do you find and assess who's really good at some things and not others? When do they need that help? Like, those things are really important. I think there's one thing which this inspires me. One of my chief operating officers at one point was a Army officer, and he said, when they do the training of the SEALs, or some of our special forces in the U.S., they have this exercise. They have 5 teams with this boat, and they've got to go through some horrific thing. There's teams of like 8, and they they rank them on how well if they go out and they have to get back, and it's like something I mean. And they go through it, and then people realize like, oh, this is boat number 1, and they won by this, and then boat 2 and boat 3 and boat 4 and boat 5. And after they go through this first horrific like 24-hour like thing, they've got to go out in storms and drown almost and everything else. They come back, and then they realize, and they're like, what did you learn? They do this like every time they have these SEAL classes, like they always do the same thing. They're like, oh, we learned it's who's on your boat. You got to be on the boat with the best people. Whoever's on the boat with the best people wins. And they always do the same thing. They take the leader, not the one that they thought was the leader from the best boat, and they put that leader on the worst boat. And invariably, that worst boat is first or second in the next competition. And then you realize it's not just the leader couldn't pull the oar harder or dive deeper. It was like they motivated their team and others. They found a way to work with the team they had to achieve success. And so I think you can tell I like to talk about these things. So I think that you learn that, like, I think the thing you can be doing is realizing that the die is not set on all the skills that you're going to have or all your capabilities. You work at it every day. And things like how you work with others is probably going to be the most important thing to your success in life, no matter what. Because that's your relationships, your personal relationships, your professional relationships, your capacity. And I'm confident that with all of the tools and AI and everything else, it's much more important now how we work together than the idea that we have to create this super person that gets everything and everything. That's not going to happen. I hope that's helpful. Yes.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to say it's been a valuable talk, and many things been said that we all hear all the time. Like, don't dwell on your mistakes, don't beat yourself up. But it's really inspiring to hear a real example of that, like in a real story of a real person. I wanted to ask, in the beginning, you mentioned like 3 things for your company is set a clear vision, second, provide resources for people to work, and third, you mentioned cut out distractions. I'm curious why you outline distractions being so critical, and do you think our attention is our currency in today's world, the most important thing?
Wow. Yes, thank you for the question, because how you asked it will really help me answer it. Because yes, I actually think the removing the distractions has become probably increasingly important, because attention is what we've got. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why the hardworking matters, because you have a certain amount you can give. It's a prioritization. I would say I include it because it's a pragmatic. It's happened practically. But yeah, like it's like someone has a little side project that they want to do, or something's going on, and you realize it's become a distraction to the team, and you have to take it away. Or you find out that my company in 1999 was changing its logo, and we had a company split in size between Europe and the United States. And I'm trying to be the globalist, even though I didn't own a passport until I was 33 years old. I didn't have a passport until I got one hours before I get on a flight to Switzerland to go raise money. It's sort of funny that now, like, this is my 9th trip to Ukraine. But the Swiss methodology of design and the American methodology of design is quite different. And we had a Swiss-made logo, and we had an agency that was going to give us a new logo. And all people were talking about every day was, which logo do you like? Is it going to be that old one, or are we going to do the new one? And I'm like, 3.5, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, this like logo thing. And that's all they want to talk about. So there were a number of people in from Europe, in New York. We were at a team building event. There were it was a space like this in the backyard of someone's apartment building, and there was some alcohol involved. And it was later, and I'm like, I got to solve this. I got to get this distraction gone. So I have an idea. And so I jump up on top of, which I'm not going to do that. I jump up on top of like this bench so everyone can see me and like, okay, everyone, thank you for all being here, that kind of thing. And it's great to have our Swiss friends and our German friends and our Brazilian friends and our Korean friends. Everyone's here and we're really excited. The business is we're finishing 1999, the fourth quarter. They do not know we're about to file to go public. They don't know that. And I really need the fourth quarter 1999, the fourth quarter numbers to come in strong because that's what we're going to show the market. And I said, I'm really excited, to finish this year strong. And I said, look, everybody, all you want to talk about is the logo. Okay, I'm going to tell you, while I've loved the logo we've had for 4.5 years, I love the new logo and I love it so much. And I'm so committed to the new logo that if you make the fourth quarter 1999 revenue targets, I'm going to tattoo it on my ankle. So I removed the distraction. Well, the other thing I had going for me was I had this friend from college who I was an athlete, but not a great athlete. I just enjoyed it. And but my friend was a gymnast, and he was a great gymnast. And he was from the United Kingdom, and then we went to college together, and we shared a house at the beach together. And he ended up in 3 Olympics. And he was the top all-arounder from England, and that was like a big thing. And when he came back from the Seoul Games, he had, and this is going to sound like your grandfather talking to you, so please understand I know what I sound like. But when I was 20, it was not normal for people to get tattoos. Tattoos were something that someone came back from the Navy that was like of your grandfather's era, but nobody in the 1980s was getting tattoos. Like, it was not a thing. So he shows up with a tattoo of the Union Jack in the Olympic rings. And he did it because there were great tattoo artists in Korea. And he was like, look, I think that I've accomplished something that's going to be with me, that like I'm going to carry it with me. So I was inspired by that. And actually sort of that night at that couple beers, I'm like, wow, these people, like I got them together. Who thought I had a company about to go public? Like, I think I could like tattoo that on like Terry Bartlett did. He became a star in Cirque du Soleil. He ended up like having as a performer after his Olympics, as a performer for like 35 years. Anyway, so, but that's why the distraction. But thank you for your question, because you gave me a better way to answer it than I had before, and I'm really thinking about that. It's the attention issue, and I think actually it's getting more important, not less important, because of the growth of like the phones and personal media and so many things. And obviously what you're all doing to maintain focus here is unbelievable through this. So yeah, thank you for the question. Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much for the given opportunity, and I would love to ask a question on how can young startup founders overcome challenges in Ukraine in this current uncertainty and warfare? What piece of advice would you give them in general? Thank you.
Great question. And I love your t-shirt. So I've spent a fair amount of time. So when I came here almost 2 years ago, I didn't yet have a Simul Media team here. So I met 10 meetings a day, 12 meetings a day for each trip with entrepreneurs, investors, government people, companies. And there's 2 conversations I had that really stood out that have caused me to give the answer I'm going to give you. One of the conversations with someone who I had a coffee with earlier today was with a woman named Evelyn, who runs a venture firm called D3. Evelyn Buchinsky, if I'm the name correct. But and I said, I'm here. We've been connected, and I said I want to help. I think I can mentor. I think I can invest. I think I can help build partnerships between Ukraine startups. I know startups. I don't know big companies, but I know startups. Or I can't be employed by big companies. I know startups. Now D3 invests in defense tech, and she said, Dave, okay, great. The world does not need one more Ukraine-made dating app. We have to win the war. And just like if you actually care about wanting to do things, you're going to put all of your time and energy that you're going to do for supporting startups into that area, because that's what matters. And then I had a meeting 2 days later with a gentleman who was then the Minister of Strategic Industries, Alexander Commission. And all I knew was they said, like, get a meeting with that guy with like the sort of mohawk and ponytail. Like, you got to find that guy. And so I found him, and it took a while to get a meeting there, but I got it. And I said, I want to help. And I am going to get to the question. I hope this is going to get you where, like, the advice I would give, because I'm going to tell you the advice I got. And he said, this is great. And I sort of walked through the kind of stuff I did, and he's like, okay, good. He's like, look, here's how I would describe technology, the tech scene and the IT scene in Ukraine. We have a lot of really, really good cooks. Like, we're creating cooks like nobody, but we don't have any chefs. And then he said, look, like product management, enterprise sales, product market fit, the kinds of things that really make the difference for a lot of the tech companies. But boy, when it comes to like math, science, like computer science, development. And he said, so it sounds like you're a chef, I'm not saying great chef, just a chef. Like, so we need that. And then I said, well, like, okay, great. Your strategic industries, you've got like 7 industries under you, like health, logistics, like mining, agriculture. Like, which are the ones I can help in most? He said, no, I don't have 7. And I was like, and he's funny. He likes to poke you. Like, it's like, he's like a lawyer, judge kind of guy. And he's like, I'm like, no, I looked at the website. He's like, why do you say I don't have 7? So I saw it on the website. He said, no, because I only have one industry. It's defense. So that's where you need to go. So I think that, I mean, for several reasons, I would say I would be 100% focused on defense and militech, because it's what matters for the world. It's what matters for Ukraine. And I say it selfishly because it matters for all of the world, number one. Number two, I say it is the richest opportunity for market. So if you looked at it from a business school standpoint, what's happening here, as horrible as it is changing every single thing we know about how all battles will be fought and wars, and how conflicts will go. And the innovation that is happening here is extraordinary. And when I say innovation, I don't just mean what's happening in like the labs and the people here. I mean like what's happening on the front line. I've been spending a lot of time in that area now, and spending a lot of time talking to people who are making decisions. The models and the things that are being built and the modifications that are happening literally in the front line on an hourly basis are changing and are leapfrogging technologies in the United States in defense and in Europe and in Asia. And so Ukraine needs that. The world needs that. With that market, there's going to be more intellectual property generated and created here than anybody. And what I find interesting is that you actually have a capacity to find people that have the technical know-how skills, the theoretical skills with the practical application skills, and that doesn't exist in many places. Like, when you have people that are actually understanding what's going on with radio frequency changes and that can make a change in firmware, and then either they or someone else actually knows how to physically install something to make it work, with not having that in a supply chain with like 8 or 10 people. And so I think that to the extent that startups and those things matter, I personally really like. I'm not saying I don't care about the advertising technology that I do, but those are the kinds of things that are unique here. And I will put one little bit in because I will say things like advertising tech will matter, and it's going to matter for one reason. It's also related to the conflict. When I was a lawyer for newspapers for a couple of years. I was a First Amendment lawyer, so I helped argue cases for freedom of the press. I know that one of the most important things that's happening here, that the world does not understand and appreciate, is the misinformation and the disinformation and the importance of news and journalism. So my second market sector, which I would argue is technically actually a defense tech or a mil tech sector, which is information management and news and journalism and technologies and techniques that can understand how to tell what's true, how to tell what's been faked, how to tell what's been misinformed, areas of cyber, things like that. But I think that's also one of those core pillars of freedom that it's not kinetic, but it's in many cases more important. And it's one of the things that's happened in the US. And one of the things that happened in the US that's actually hurt our news and journalism, which is still among the best in the world, is that advertising tech now powers industry I'm part of 5 of the 6 most valuable companies in the world. They make either a significant amount of their profits or most of them. Like we were talking coming in, I said before, Amazon. The advertising business in Amazon, which is only 6 years old, only 6 years has been more than a few $100 million, is more profitable than the e-commerce business and AWS combined in 6 years. The profits are paid for out of advertising. It's 135% of the profits of Google. It's 30% of the profits of Apple. It's 25, 30% of the profits of Microsoft. So, and that's fundamentally how people, news, information, entertainment, how it's collected, how it's monetized. So I put that out as a sector too. But I would look for the things that help like solve the big problems of the world, because they're the big problems of the world. And you're at the middle of both of those right here. And so I would say, my last thing I would say, what venture capitalists always say to the entrepreneur is, what's your unfair competitive advantage? Like, oh, well, I think I'm smart and nice and people like me and I used to work in this business. Like, no, I want your unfair competitive advantage. Not just your competitive advantage, like unfair. It's unfair what's happening here, but it's your circumstances. So your unfair competitive advantage is you are in the petri dish of in both the news and information warfare and the kinetic warfare that is reshaping my children's future. And so if I'm starting up here, that's what I'd be doing. And that's why I'm both proud to be working with Simulmedia and like building the business here and having people. And I'm really proud that, tomorrow I'm going to go meet a team that I work with in Kharkiv that's doing really amazing stuff in navigation for unmanned vehicles. And I'm learning about like laser physics, which I don't know anything about, but it's fun to learn it. Any other questions?
We have a lot of time now, so maybe it's the last opportunity to ask some questions. Maybe some
I'll also say,
interesting one.
I'll give you, my email is dave@simulmedia.com. I'm on LinkedIn, but please, I'm available to any of you at any point if I can be helpful too. Do not hesitate to reach out, pitch an idea to me, ask a question. You're going to see me back here. We're going to do more and more with Key Polytech, and I call it Maxwell Help, but I'm happy to answer more questions. But I'll be back every 2 months or so, no matter what. So you will not. I'm going to be like we call it the bad penny. Like you're not going to be able to get rid of me. So
I think we will share later your contacts.
Yes.
So it's okay, and we want to say thank you to you for visiting us today, especially Student Council of Faculty of Applied Mathematics. And it was truly inspiring to hear your story, to hear your speech and your answers. So I believe that it will help us not only in our careers and from beginning from today. So we want to give you a little present.
Thank you.
Here is T-shirt. You can look into it.
I like it.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to take a selfie here because for those of you who will follow me on either LinkedIn or other things, no, I overshare, so I need to get a good one here so everyone look happy and excited. My daughters criticized my selfie techniques. But I say, they were actually